The atmosphere in the Forrester estate was thick with anticipation. It was a night of celebration, an annual family gathering where tradition demanded that they come together, laugh, and honor the legacy of their fashion empire. For the Forresters, these moments were sacred, a way of reinforcing family ties, of reaffirming their commitment to the dynasty they had built. The evening began like any other. Guests trickled in, laughter filled the air, and the clinking of glasses echoed in the grand hall. Eric Forrester, patriarch of the family and founder of the Forrester Creations empire, stood proudly at the center of the room, hosting his family with the grace and charisma that had made him one of the most respected figures in the fashion world. But tonight would not be like any other. The doors to the ballroom swung open, and all conversation halted. The room fell into stunned silence as a figure entered, shrouded in mystery, yet undeniably familiar. Her presence was commanding, powerful, and as she stepped into the light, it became clear who it was. Stephanie Forrester, the matriarch of the Forrester family, long believed to be dead, had returned. Her sudden appearance sent shockwaves through the room. Whispers erupted. Eyes widened. People exchanged uncertain glances, unsure of how to react. Hadn't she died years ago? Wasn't her passing a tragedy that had left a void in the family's heart? How could she be standing there before them, as if she had never left? The tension in the air was palpable as Stephanie stood, regal as ever, surveying the room. Her gaze locked on Eric, and the weight of her stare was impossible to ignore. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Eric's face betrayed nothing, but internally, he was reeling. The woman who had been his partner, his equal, his wife, had suddenly reappeared alive, unscathed, and carrying with her an air of authority that no one could ignore. Her return had the potential to change everything. Eric was the first to speak, though his voice was shaky, as if unsure of how to process the overwhelming shock he was feeling. "Stephanie," he said, his voice thick with disbelief. "Is it really you?" Stephanie's lips curved into a smile, but it was a smile filled with secrets. "Yes, Eric, it's me. I've been gone for a long time, but I'm here now. And I'm not here for just a reunion. I'm here to reclaim what's rightfully mine." The shock in the room deepened as her words hung in the air. Everyone knew that Stephanie had been a central figure in Forrester Creations, but what did she mean by reclaiming what was hers? Had she come back for her place in the company? Was she here to take back the power that had been hers for so long? The questions buzzed around the room like an electric current. But Stephanie had a far grander plan, one that no one could have anticipated. She moved toward Eric with an air of determination, her every step calculated. She had no time for pleasantries. No time for small talk. This was a battle for the soul of the Forrester family, and she was ready to fight. As she reached him, she paused and looked him directly in the eye. "Eric," she began, her voice low but commanding, "I'm here because you owe me everything. You've taken what is mine, and I'm not going to stand by and let you keep it." Eric's expression shifted, a flicker of confusion crossing his features. "What are you talking about, Stephanie?" "I don't understand." Stephanie let out a small, knowing laugh. "You've forgotten, haven't you? You've hidden it so well, I almost believed you for a while. But I know the truth. I know about the will." The room went quiet. The mention of the will sent a ripple through the family members who were gathered. A will? What was she talking about? Everyone had always believed that Stephanie had left everything to Eric when she died, entrusting him with the family business, with her legacy. But now, Stephanie was speaking of a different will. A will that no one knew about. A will that could turn everything upside down. Stephanie continued, her voice growing stronger as she spoke. "Years ago, before I was presumed dead, I made a will. A will that was written when I was in full control of my faculties, when I knew exactly what I wanted for the future of Forrester Creations." "But Eric," she said, her tone turning colder, "you didn't like that will, did you? You didn't like that I had left everything to myself, to my children." You didn't like that I had made it clear that Forrester Creations was not just your empire, it was mine too. The silence in the room deepened, as each word from Stephanie hit harder than the last. It was as if a dam had broken, and the truth was flooding into the open. Eric's face paled, and his eyes darted around the room as if searching for an escape, a way to explain away what Stephanie was accusing him of. But there was no escape. There was no way to deny what she was saying. I had a lawyer, Stephanie continued, and I had him execute my will, but Eric, you had it destroyed. You replaced it with your own, a will that favored you, that gave you full control of everything. You wanted it all, Eric. You wanted to take everything from me, and you did. You erased my legacy, my vision for Forrester Creations, and you twisted the law to make it all yours. The shock in the room was deafening. Family members, once certain of their place in the Forrester empire, now found themselves questioning everything. How much had Eric truly done in the name of power? Had he manipulated the family's legacy to serve his own interests? The accusations Stephanie made were weighty, and the implications of them were enormous. Eric stood there, paralyzed. The truth, the betrayal, was too much for him to handle. His empire, the very thing he had built with his own hands, was now at risk of being torn apart. His marriage, the foundation of his family, had been built on lies. How long had he kept this secret? How long had he hidden the truth from everyone, including the children he had raised? Stephanie's eyes gleamed with victory as she saw the effect her words had on the room. I'm here to take back what's mine, she declared. And I'm not leaving until I get it. The atmosphere in the room became charged with tension. Family members exchanged uneasy glances. No one knew how to respond to this bombshell. Eric, once the unchallenged leader of the Forrester family, now found himself backed into a corner. His empire, the thing he had spent his entire life building, was now at risk of being torn apart. The Forrester family was on the brink of a civil war, and Stephanie, with her mysterious return and her shocking revelation, had just thrown the first grenade. But what Stephanie didn't realize was that her return, her quest to reclaim what she believed was rightfully hers, had only just begun. The fight for power within the Forrester family was far from over. Eric, now fully aware of the stakes, was determined not to let go without a fight. And as the family gathered around, the air heavy with tension, it was clear that the battle for control of Forrester Creations was about to get far uglier. The return of Stephanie Forrester, with her revelations and her demand for what she believed was hers, had ignited a firestorm within the family. No one was prepared for the chaos that was about to unfold. And as the battle for control of Forrester Creations began, there would be no telling who would come out on top. One thing was certain. Everything had changed, and the Forrester family would never be the same again. The Forrester estate had always been a place of celebration, of high fashion, and the powerful Forrester legacy. But tonight, the once grand halls were filled with a thick tension. The family, gathered for a long-awaited reunion, had been blindsided by Stephanie's unexpected return from the shadows. No one had seen it coming, and no one knew exactly what her motives were, but her presence was undeniable. Stephanie had come back for one reason and one reason only, to claim what she believed was hers. Her demand was simple: the family business, Forrester Creations, must be handed back to her. For years, she had been absent, presumed dead, but now she was back, and she wasn't leaving without what she was entitled to. The accusations had flown like daggers in the air. Eric Forrester, once the proud and steadfast patriarch of the family, had been at the center of it all. His face had drained of color as Stephanie tore into him, revealing the shocking truth about a will he had altered years ago to secure control of the family's empire. What once seemed like a small act of self-preservation had now turned into a full-blown family war, with each revelation causing more damage than the last. The room was filled with stunned silence, the family members looking back and forth between Stephanie and Eric, unsure of what would come next. Eric, who had built Forrester Creations from the ground up, was cornered. He had never thought that Stephanie, his partner, his equal, and at one time, his greatest ally, would ever turn on him like this. But there she was, standing tall, fierce, and relentless. She demanded that Eric hand over the reins of Forrester Creations, not just to secure her legacy, but to take back control of the empire she believed she had been unjustly deprived of. The argument between them escalated rapidly, with words exchanged that cut deeper than any blade could. The love, the respect, the shared dreams that had once bound them together seemed to crumble in an instant as the weight of betrayal pressed down on them both. And then, in the midst of the heated confrontation, it happened. Eric's body suddenly stiffened, his breath became labored, and a sharp, agonizing pain pierced through his chest. His face contorted with the shock of it, and before anyone could react, he collapsed to the floor. The room erupted in chaos. Family members rushed to his side, calling for help, but it was too late. Eric Forrester, the heart of the family and the soul of Forrester Creations, had suffered a massive heart attack. His life, once vibrant and full of ambition, was snuffed out in an instant. The man who had built an empire, who had weathered every storm, was gone, and with him, the very foundation of Forrester Creations seemed to shatter. The shock was overwhelming. The Forrester family had lost their patriarch, and with his death came the inevitable question, who would take control of Forrester Creations now? The empire Eric had spent his life creating was no longer just a company, it was the epicenter of a bitter battle. With Eric gone, the battle lines were drawn more clearly than ever. The once united family had been fractured, and the fight for control was about to reach a fever pitch. As news of Eric's death spread, a deep sense of dread loomed over the family. The questions that had lingered before his passing now became urgent. Who would lead Forrester Creations? Who would take Eric's place at the helm? Would the business continue to thrive, or would it collapse under the weight of infighting and ambition? The tension between Stephanie and Eric's children escalated, as each of them saw themselves as the rightful heir to their father's empire. Ridge, the eldest son, had always believed he was the natural successor. He had spent years working alongside his father, building relationships with designers, managing the business, and representing Forrester Creations to the world. But Ridge had never anticipated that Stephanie would return, let alone claim that she had been wronged all those years ago. Her return and her demands rattled him to the core. He believed that he had earned his place as the leader of Forrester Creations, but now he was being forced to face the reality that his mother, once the driving force behind the family, wanted to reclaim what she felt was hers by birthright. Brooke, Eric's wife, was caught in the middle of the battle for control. She had spent years supporting Eric, building a life with him, but now she was forced to watch as her family splintered apart. She had always believed in Eric's vision, but now, with his sudden death, everything was in jeopardy. Would Ridge take the reins of Forrester Creations, or would Stephanie, with her fierce determination and unyielding ambition, take control once more? And then there was Hope, Eric's granddaughter, who had always been a beacon of optimism and hope for the family. She had inherited her grandfather's passion for fashion, and she had always dreamed of one day running Forrester Creations herself. But now, with Eric's death and the chaos surrounding the business, Hope was faced with an uncertain future. Would she stand by Ridge and help him take control of the company, or would she ally with Stephanie, the woman who had once been her mentor but now seemed to have her sights set on dominating the family business? Hope's decision would not only affect her own future, but the future of Forrester Creations itself. The power struggle that followed Eric's death was unlike anything the family had ever experienced. Ridge, Stephanie's eldest son, was determined to take control of the business. He believed it was his birthright, that he had the experience and the vision to lead Forrester Creations into the future. But Stephanie, now emboldened by the shock of Eric's death, was equally determined to reclaim what she saw as hers. She had been excluded from the company for years, and now she was ready to fight for everything she had lost. The tension between the two of them was palpable, each one vying for control, each one unwilling to back down. As the battle for power raged on, it became clear that Stephanie wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for the legacy of the Forrester family, for the name that had built an empire. She believed that Forrester Creations had been stolen from her, that Eric's manipulation of the will had robbed her of her rightful place at the top. Now, with his death, she was determined to take back control, no matter the cost. The war between her and her children had only just begun, and there was no telling who would come out on top. The family was divided. Some, like Ridge and Brooke, supported the idea of Ridge taking over, while others, including Stephanie and her loyalists, felt that she was the one who deserved to lead the company. The board of directors, once a unified front, was now split, each member trying to align themselves with the power they believed would ultimately triumph. With each passing day, the stakes grew higher. The battle for control of Forrester Creations was no longer just about the family business, it was about the future of the Forrester name itself. Stephanie's return and the shocking revelation about Eric's death set off a chain of events that would have lasting consequences for everyone involved. The legacy of Forrester Creations, once secure in Eric's hands, was now in jeopardy. The family was fractured, and the fight for control was only getting more intense. No one knew who would come out on top, but one thing was clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The Forrester family had entered a new era, and the battle for power had only just begun.